Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Film Seizure. I'm Jeff Arbuckle. With me, as always, my co-host. First, check mirror.
What's up, Gwarb?
How's it going, Chirk? And now we have Jarmo Mamamer. How's it going, Jarmo Mamamer?
I'm doing great.
All right.
We're going to talk about some De Palma.
Yeah, so, this week we have Brian De Palma's 1987 awesome movie, The Untouchables. This is the first time we've talked about De Palma since Phantom of the Paradise?
Phantom of the Paradise. The only other De Palma we've done?
I think so.
You know, it's funny. I forgot this was De Palma, and I was pleasantly surprised when I realized it was De Palma again. I always think of the Mammoth script, and I forget that it was De Palma that directed this. And man, De Palma shoots the fucking shit out of this thing. It is great. His visual style is just so on top of his game in this movie.
Yeah, and we're returning from a kind of a downer, David Mamet, with The Postman Always Rings Twice.
Yep.
We now have a good David Mamet, which is.
I will say though that it's not a perfect Mamet. There are some bad decisions.
I have some problems with this movie.
Well, okay, we're gonna talk about that.
But I do really like this movie, and this is, I think, Jeff is something I'm gonna steal his thunder real quick before we get into it. But this is one of those movies that they just don't make anymore.
Yes, exactly. Because there have been many movies about various people that are in this, that are depicted in this movie. And all of them are not movies I want to watch.
Yeah.
So no, they don't make movies like this anymore. We'll talk about the various problems that you guys have, because I have a feeling I know what the problems are that you have with it.
They're pretty glaring for me.
Well, I think I know why you have problems with it, but why I don't have problems with it, we'll get to.
Sure.
Okay. So, The Untouchables. First and foremost, how'd you guys like those opening credits?
Dude, it's my first note. My first note is killer title card, shadowy, noirish.
Mine is rad title sequence, rad music.
Yeah, the music is real.
Fucking A, man.
Ennio,
is almost Morricone.
The music that is used for the opening credits is very almost militaristic.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is meant to kind of talk about like the factions of the law and the mob, and it is basically a war zone in Chicago in the early 30s. And there's even we even get a little bit of opening title or opening, what do they call that, where you get a little bit of a preamble to the movie while Robert De Niro is going to get shaved.
Oh God, that right there, that very first shot, I'm already just like, okay, De Palma, you magnificent bastard. Like that above, shot from above of De Niro in the barber's chair getting shaved, and the block of text to the right of the screen is, I mean, it's so unique. I've never really seen anything quite like that before or since.
Well, the text is justified by his body, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's almost kind of hard to read the text, on a smaller screen, right? Like on a big screen, that would have worked beautifully, even more beautifully. But man, it's unique, and I just loved it. I love it, and the way it pushes down to De Niro in the chair. And then I think it cuts to him with the shaving cream on, and the movie starts, and it's freaking great.
Yeah, and he is at this point in time, he's talking to the press, is almost like he is the hero of the town.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
holding court.
He is.
He's
He
holding
is.
court. And
Yeah.
but at the same time, though, he is also menacing. Like, there's nothing there that is I mean, it's just he is being menacing regardless.
Well, he was an imposing figure and
Yeah.
a powerful figure, and he knew how to project that. And De Niro knew how to project that, right? But you also, in the context of history, understand that Capone was not always public enemy number one. At this point in time, but at this point in the movie, in the narrative, he was kind of regarded as a pretty well liked philanthropist. He gave tons of money to charity. He wasn't really portrayed as the violent character that he eventually became. And a lot of it was because most people just didn't take Prohibition that seriously, especially in Chicago.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe he was making money illegally, but no one really gave a shit. It wasn't that things got sticky for Capone.
Yeah, well, here's the title card. 1930, Prohibition has transformed Chicago into a city at war. Rival gangs compete for control of the city's billion-dollar empire of illegal alcohol, enforcing their will with the hand grenade and Tommy gun. It is the time of the gang lords. It is time of Al Capone. And then that's when the reporter, who I think is a British, I think he's writing for a British newspaper, says an article which I believe appeared in a newspaper asked why, since you are, or it would seem that you are, in effect, the mayor of Chicago, you've not simply been appointed to that position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the mayor was in his pocket.
Yep. And so right there, that's all you need to know is some text on screen and the reporter's first line. So yeah, it is. So that's what we're entering into, and we get Al Capone talking about how he's not a violent man, although some of his actions, and certainly later he goes to bat. We do find out that maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but most mob bosses never actually directly kill anybody.
I think you're wrong.
I think you're probably wrong because they've got to get to where they are.
Well, sure.
By killing people.
You mean by the time that they're powerful, they may not. They always have somebody else do it.
Right.
Well, I know what you're referring to, and maybe let's talk about it when we get there.
Okay.
The baseball bat scene, because that is actually rooted in some particular history, perhaps mythology of Al Capone.
Yeah, you brought up a really, really good word there, mythology, because this movie is 100% mythology.
Yes.
So, and actually the entire story of the Untouchables is most likely mythology.
Well, I think we should bring up the fact Chuck mentioned it before we started recording, that the source material is based on a novel, not a novel, but of a recounting of the takedown of Al Capone by co-written by Eliot Ness. So you already have a little bit of stickiness, right? When you're telling your own story, you have a little bit of a tendency to embellish things,
right?
Especially when you're Eliot Ness, and this is a guy who, after the events of taking down Al Capone, he had a very checkered history.
Yes, he did.
With the law, with politics, with finances.
It's the exact same thing with he mirrors Pat Garrett in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because Pat Garrett had an up and down life after the possible killing of Billy the Kid.
Mm-hmm. So what's interesting here is that the book, The Untouchables, was published posthumously.
Yeah, the stories were collected right at the end of his life.
He wasn't even there to have to defend some of the things that he may have embellished.
Right,
so he instantly became a mythological a character himself.
Well, it certainly helped with the TV show.
And then the TV show was a huge hit. Yep.
Right. So this movie is almost entirely fiction. because there are things that are that are not accurate at all.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's putting it mildly.
Yeah. So, but yeah. So what we have is so we begin with Al Capone talking about not being a violent man. Cut to a local tavern or some sort of general store or something. An obviously Italian man is pressuring an obviously not Italian man into buying liquor. And the shop owner is like, I don't want it. I don't want this. I'm not going to buy any. I don't want it. A little girl comes in to get, what is she there for? Water?
So here's what I think. No, he is getting his liquor from somebody other than Al Capone.
Okay.
And he's pouring liquor into a pot so it's concealed because the mom is sick. So it's her medicine. It's alcohol.
Gotcha.
And he is trying to get, or trying to, he's forcing the man to take their liquor instead. And if he doesn't comply, well, what's next?
Yeah. So a man leaves the building after the guy leaning on the shop owner. And he leaves behind a little case, a little briefcase. And the little girl's like, "Mister, you've forgotten your case." And what's the best way to start your movie? You blow up a kid.
Jesus Christ.
Well, this is really smart because it leaves no doubt about your villain is, right? Because in reality, what happened was the thing that kind of changed the public tide on Capone was the St. Valentine's Day Massacre.
Yeah.
And in the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, the only people who really died were a bunch of gangsters, right? It was sort of it was a mass assassination hit, probably ordered by Capone on rival gang members. So that's a little bit like, it's hard to sort of really sell Capone.
It's dog eat dog in that case.
Right. Because you could twist that a different way in 1987, where it's like, well, it's just gangsters killing gangsters, whatever. But if you kill a kid, right, then instant villain.
Yep.
Yep.
And then we are introduced to Eliot Ness, who has been installed in Chicago by the Treasury Department. Now, it's always funny that Eliot Ness was a Treasury agent because you wouldn't think that the Treasury would be enforcing the prohibition. But I believe, obviously the ATF doesn't exist yet. So who does this fall upon? It's like you would think it would be the FBI or something, but I don't think the FBI could be bothered with this. So it's the Treasury Department.
Give them something to do.
Give those guys some. And by the way, which I guess makes sort of sense, right? Because people are profiting off of the illegal sale
and no taxes.
So it probably does fall to the Treasury Department, but you would always think that Eliot Ness was an FBI agent or was a member of the Secret Service or something. No, he worked for the Treasury Department, which does not exactly bolster any kind of manly persona for him.
And I think
he almost seems like
here,
he's almost like a desk job guy who's now being sent to oversee something.
Yeah, and I think the history here was that a high-ranking official in Chicago was kind of fed up with the violence after the St. Valentine's Day Massacre and asked...
Yeah, because that was, 1929? Was that when the St. Valentine's Day Massacre was?
I think so, yeah. And, sorry, I don't have all my timeline of events right, but I think what happened was he actually went to Hoover because Herbert Hoover, I believe, had just become president, and he implored him for federal help. He's like, "Look, Chicago is completely corrupt. Law enforcement is corrupt. Capone has everyone in his pocket. We're not going to be able to turn the tides here unless we get federal assistance." And that's when Hoover got the Treasury Department involved.
Yeah.
I have a question about a choice by De Palma in the beginning of this movie, and I was waiting for some kind of payoff on it. But when you're introduced to Capone, his face is covered, right?
Mhm.
He's got a towel on his face, then he has shaving cream on his face. And when they introduce Eliot Ness, they never show his face. They shoot him from behind. Do you think there was a reason that he didn't show faces in the beginning of this movie? It seemed purposeful to me. I don't even know if you guys noticed it, but
it might be. It may just be old storytelling elements of you introduce somebody from behind and then you have a bigger reveal of them up front or something like that. It may just be an old style of shooting your characters,
because you don't even see Costner's face in that first scene at all.
Well, you do later, but it's because they keep he has to end up he has to shut down the press conference, and that's when you see him. It's almost like
there you do. I was talking about with his wife when he's reading the newspaper. You don't see his face.
Yeah, no, yeah, right. It's yeah, I think that's just hey, the hero is coming.
Yeah,
he's going to be shrouded.
That's a little bit old Hollywood. Yeah.
Fair.
Cool. Yeah, it's just the reveal type of the old reveal stuff. But
you got to give him the hero shot. Yeah. Tease him, then show him.
Yeah.
Yep.
So then, so he's introduced, and it's like, oh, it's time to go to work. It's Monday morning, whatever day, and it's time for me to go to work. He is introduced. Nobody in Chicago is impressed by him whatsoever, to the point where he can't even answer questions. It's like, whatever, just shut it down. I'm just going to go to work.
Well, they immediately assume he has political ambitions and this and that. Like they assume he's corruptible, right? Just like everybody else in Chicago. Yep.
Yeah, and the thing is that he's a little bit wide-eyed and a little bit overly naive. And so he ends up getting a tip that there's going to be some liquor that's going to be coming from Canada. They're going to be in crates that have the maple leaf on it.
Yeah,
and so he sets up people. There's a little photographer guy that's always around. That is always wants to like, he basically wants to be made famous by Eliot Ness.
That's like an old noir thing too.
Yeah,
the pesky beat, or newspaper man,
right?
Photographer, yeah.
Yeah, and he, so like they go to the raid at this place, and he sees somebody who is doesn't look on the up and up. So he goes with the cop that's there with him, just the regular uniformed policeman, and it finds out it's the photographer who's followed him here, and he accidentally shoots off the
flashes him in the eye.
Yeah, he shoots off a shot which causes the eye, the damn it, what's that thing? The flash. Yeah. Damn, I
just said it.
I know, I'm having a very hard time with that word. Anyway, so it's like, it's just already we're kind of off to a troubling start for this raid. And they get the photographers, like, get him the hell out of here. He gets back to a gigantic, like, snowplow tank that they're going to use to bust open the door. And he tells the guy, all right, let's do some good. Which, of course, the next day the guy makes fun of. But then when they get in, they get in, and they start busting open the crates with the Canadian flag on it. It's just a bunch of umbrellas.
It should have been maple syrup, my opinion, but
whatever. But
it doesn't help the shot though, because he opens the umbrella and as soon as he does it, and he's got it over his head. That's the picture that they take. So it's the perfect full shot.
Right. Yeah. And he's consternated by it, and
on the front page.
Right. So obviously, somebody tipped Capone off, which he knows. He knows that too. He's been made to look a fool. The town's laughing at him. He's gonna take a walk home, and he's walking by this bridge, and it looks like, from an outsider's perspective, if you're looking from behind him or from the side, you think, oh no, this guy's going to jump off a bridge. And sure enough, a kindly old beat cop thinks he's going to jump from the bridge. And this is Malone. This is Sean Connery, just a regular old beat cop who he's not going to take any shit off this guy who's on this bridge. Just go home, whatever. And he says, hey, you're carrying a gun. What are you? Oh, I'm a treasury agent. Okay, fine. Turns and walks away. Ness takes offense to that, saying, hey, you turned your back to a guy with a gun. Well, you said you were a treasury agent. And how do you know that I am? Yeah, I just know things.
Nobody would make that claim if they weren't.
Yeah, nobody's going to say that if they weren't.
He's basically pissing on him, like, you have a shitty position, like you wouldn't admit to that.
Yeah.
Right. And he also can immediately read Costner. It's like, you're whatever. You're harmless, essentially. I see Jason drinking some booze from Al Capone there, it looks like.
Drinking a little booze.
Drinking a little booze.
Yeah, a little bit of
little nip.
The prohibitive, but I don't know.
Exactly.
Some bootleg liquor. There you go.
Yep, exactly.
Drinking some maple syrup.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jim Malone, basically, it's like, hey, you going home, or whatever, you married and whatever. And Ness is like, yeah, I'm going home. And he's like, well, there you go. You already succeeded in the number one rule of being a law enforcer. You go home alive.
Yep.
And he just walks off. He doesn't have any time.
He says, make sure your shift is over. Make sure when your shift is over, you go home alive.
Yep. So then, Ness, the next day shows up to work, and there's this little nerdy guy there by the name of Oscar, who's pouring over numbers, and he's basically he's essentially what you would think an IRS agent would be like. He's pouring over everything, and multiple times throughout the first half of this movie, it's like, well, I think we can get him on tax evasion.
Yeah.
Like, look, he hasn't paid anything. He's been making millions of dollars.
And he's laughed off, basically.
Yeah. It's like, they feel like that's not going to be a just way of taking them down, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's not
a quick aside here. The FBI agent who is the accountant, but everyone in the FBI is an agent. Everyone in the FBI gets the same training. Right. Everybody in the FBI gets certified on hand weapon, on guns and weapons and things. So that's what makes the FBI sort of fun is you might just be an accountant, but he's still deadly, right?
Yeah.
Which you get, that pays off much later.
Oh God.
Because he is also kind of a nerdy dude, right?
And he's just a little pipsqueak. He's a tiny dude too.
There's lots of tiny dudes in this movie. Sorry,
this actor is so ingrained in me. It's Charles Martin Smith, because an actor that just popped up in a lot of movies that I was exposed to as a kid, like American Graffiti. He's one of the leads in that. He's fantastic in it. He was in a movie called Never Cry Wolf, which is, I think, based on a true story about a guy who tries to live in the Arctic or something. And I remember a scene with him where he eats rats. The whole idea is he's going to live with wolves, and he's going to eat their same diet, so he's got to eat rats, and it's disgusting.
He would do well in the world of Demolition Man.
He would. And he was also in Starman. Yeah.
And the Buddy Holly story.
And fuck yeah, he was in the Buddy Holly story. Yeah. So I don't know. He's just one of those faces, right?
Yeah.
And then he just seemed to disappear for a while. I don't know if he's done much work recently or not, but always liked his face.
Yeah.
He's been directing stuff.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Nothing, Dolphin Tale and A Dog's Way Home.
Huh.
Oh, it's like family fare type stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
No, good for him.
Yeah, good for him. So Ness thinking about the night before, and now he's being faced with this accountant who, it's like Ness knows that Al Capone's a bad dude, right? And he's bad hombre, but he knows that it's not exciting. It's not what he got into the job for, just to bust him on tax evasion. So he decides, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go pay a visit to this guy that I met last night, Jimmy Malone. And Malone's like, it's like, dude, what are you here for? It's like, I'm just a beat cop, and it's like, and
I believe more in coming home alive now, basically, than the job itself.
Right, because this guy is probably 3 months from retirement, which of course is going to be deadly for him. But he's, it's like, and Ness is like trying to say, but you're a good cop. You knew things intuitively. And it's like, well, if I'm such a good cop, why am I still walking the beat at my age?
This is interesting.
Because
Because he's a good cop because he is a beat cop.
Exactly.
He hasn't risen through the ranks by falling into the corruptness of the Chicago Police Department.
Exactly. He's someone who didn't take bribes.
Yeah.
So he can't be trusted at the higher levels.
Right.
But he still has friends who are just like, well, we'll just put him in a position of, where he can't cause anybody any trouble, which is a B cop.
Well, I think the captain was probably someone who worked with him. They were both B cops together. They don't really explore that story, but that's what it feels like.
Oh, 100%. Both Irish cops. Yep. Totally.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. There's still a loyalty there, but there's only so much trust.
Yeah.
Right.
So like, Malone just kind of basically shrugs off Ness. Well, Ness goes back to work, and then I think that's when he meets Oscar. I think he goes back to work. Oscar is there going through the stuff, and then he sees that Malone has shown up at the precinct, and that's when he's finally able to, like, yeah, whatever, Oscar, I'll talk to you later. It's like, and they
have a seat, Oscar. You can keep pouring over these numbers. I'm gonna go be a real cop.
Yeah, I'm gonna go talk to this fucking badass that just walked in.
Yeah.
See you later. And this is my favorite scene in the movie.
It's my favorite too. It's perfect.
So Jimmy Malone takes Eliot Ness to a church, and where they can talk alone quietly. Nobody's gonna bother him. Malone asks him, he says, so you said you wanted to get Capone. Do you really want to get him? You see what I'm saying is, what are you prepared to do? And Ness is like, well, anything within the law. And so Malone responds, and then what are you prepared to do? If you open the can on these worms, you must be prepared to go all the way, because they're not going to give up the fight until one of you is dead. And then Ness like kind of reaffirms, I want to get Capone. I just don't know how to do it. And then this is my favorite line in the whole damn movie. It's like, you want to know how to get Capone? They pull a knife, you pull a gun. He sends one of yours to the hospital, you send one of his to the morgue. That's the Chicago way. And that's how you get Capone. Now, do you want to do that? Are you ready to do that? I'm offering a deal. Do you want this deal? And then Ness basically says, I've sworn to capture this man with all the legal powers at my disposal, and I will do so. And Malone looks over at the altar and looks back and is like, well, the Lord hates a coward, and offers his hand, and they shake it. And it's like, do you know what a blood oath is, Mr. Ness? Ness is like, yes. It's like, good, because you just took one. And at this point in time, Malone is like, he is like superhero mode now. Yeah. He is like, I know everything. I know how to do this. I know. And, it's like he is ready to take Ness under his wing and get Al Capone.
That is also vintage Mamet. Like that the way that scene is paced, the beats of the responses. Like it is absolutely vintage Mamet. There's another line that comes on the heels of that I really, really like, where I'm going to paraphrase Ness, but he asks, so how do we find men we can trust? And and Malo answers, afraid of getting a rotten apple, get it from the tree.
Don't get it from the ground, get it from the tree.
Yeah.
Perfect. So they go to the academy.
Yep.
And they're looking around at and like Malone just walks in like he owns the place, and he's looking around at like the people at the firing range, and he tells the warrant officer, I would assume, or whoever the officer is that's in charge there, and he's like, hey, get me the 2 best shots. And they bring out the first guy.
This kills me.
Oh God, this whole thing. And it's this nervous little dude. Well, he's not a little dude, he's a big dude, but he's nervous, and he's like, almost, you can tell he's like shaking. And it's like Malone starts questioning him. He's like, so why you want to be a cop? And the guy's given the fucking oath,
right.
like to serve and to protect.
Well, he can't even get that out.
He just stutters. Like, yeah. And it's like, oh, don't give me that bullshit. It's like, what are you really here for? And then he gets some sort of an answer out. He
says in not so many words, I can help with crime.
Yeah, and so he's like, all right, he sends him back. He like throws that fish back. But then what he says to Ness as they're waiting for George Stone to come, it's like, well, there goes the next chief of police.
Yep.
It's perfect. So perfect.
And then, oh God. And then Andy Garcia comes out, and this George Stone. It's like, yeah, George Stone, what's your real name? Like, already can see through. It's like, here's a guy who's, Andy Garcia is like the least non-Italian looking person that you will ever see.
But he made a career.
Oh man.
Playing Italians.
Where is Andy Garcia these days? Come on, man. Where you at?
I don't know, but man, he's been in so many great movies. I really, really like Andy Garcia.
Yeah.
And this was an early one for him.
Yeah, this was before Black Rain.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So then he comes out, it's like, well, what's your real name? And it's like Giuseppe or something. It's like, oh fuck. This is just what we need, a dirty thieving wop. And of course, this all riles up Andy Garcia. He's like, he puts the gun in Malone's face. He's like, oh, I like this one.
It's so Hollywood. It's like this would never happen in real life.
No.
It's like so far beyond reality into mythology.
Nothing that's ever been in anything called the Untouchables would happen in real life.
Right. But man, it makes for one hell of a fun scene.
Yeah, and it's like, and Ness is like, yeah, I like him too. It's like, okay, we'll take him.
Yeah, and his stipulation is he doesn't want married men.
Does not want married. And Malone looks at him, it's like, well, you're married. It's like, I don't want married men.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they can be gotten to.
Right.
Because then, so they take George Stone, they go back to the precinct, and Malone's like, all right, so if you really want to know where all the booze is going for, you got to come with me. And they get their shotguns, and
we need one more. We need one more.
Yeah, and so he looks at Oscar, points the shotgun at him. It's like, do you have a badge or whatever? And it's like, yeah. It's like, then you carry a gun. So now you've got 4 guys with big ass shotguns. They just go across the street to the post office.
This kills me, man.
Yeah, and it's like, whoa, and like Ness is like, whoa, what are you doing here?
You better be right about this.
It's like everybody knows where the alcohol is. They just don't want to cross Capone.
Right. And and so they raid the post office, and sure enough, they make a big ass bust. So now the Untouchables are basically born. That was their hero moment.
I love the one guy too who says you don't have a warrant or something. It's like, it's fucking federal property. I'm a federal agent.
Right. Well, I like it.
Well, he says you don't have a warrant, and I think basically Connery just says fuck off.
Yeah. He punches him and says, "How do you feel now?" It's pretty.
Here's my warrant. He hits him with the fucking gun.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting here because a lot of the things that he does early are things Ness would never do.
Yeah.
He's teaching
But-
Ness that he has to go one.
But he
step
repeats all those things later, right?
Yeah,
Like he punches a guy and says, "How do you feel now?" He says something that
Right.
Malone says early in the movie.
Well, it all culminates.
Never giving up the fight.
It all culminates on the rooftop with Nitty, but that's getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah,
right. But the turn where Ness begins to realize that he has to do things a particular way is in Canada.
Yep.
And we're almost there at this point.
God, as a
Yeah,
kid,
next-
that's my favorite. I love it so much. Like
Yeah.
I could just rewatch that entire scene, over and over. But
so now Eliot Ness and the other three guys are now starting to get some victories. It's starting to get on the radar of Capone to the point where he kills a guy. And you can tell he's now bothered, because before he's all words, he's all cool. If you cross him, he'll send somebody. But now he's starting to feel the heat a little bit.
Well, yeah, So is that the next scene where they show him with the baseball bat, or is the bribe first?
yeah, I think
Okay.
so.
The bride may be first, actually, because they get back, because they went and they had the lunch, they've had some victories, they got their picture taken, they're feeling pretty good. The alderman shows up and like dumps a bunch of money in an envelope on Ness's desk, and he's like, so what's that?
That guy was overacting so hard in this scene.
I know.
Steph was like, ugh.
No, the baseball bat scene does come first. The baseball bat scene does come first.
So
Yes.
well, go ahead.
Because that let's talk about that real quick. That is, I think, again, one of those things where there are eyewitnesses to that, to Capone killing not just one, but I think several men with a baseball bat that had been potentially trying to double cross him or whatnot, and at a dinner, not necessarily like a big King Arthur at the round table circular meeting of the gangsters dinner, but
don't worry about it, Jay. It's Chicago town.
I know, yeah, but yeah, that's taken from eyewitness accounts and mythological folklore of Capone, and it definitely sets him up again. It reinforces again. Okay, yeah, remember, he's a bad guy. And he is ruthlessly bad. If you didn't think he was bad when one of his guys blew up a young girl, now he's actually committing violence at his own hands.
Seeing it. Yep.
And you're seeing it.
And it's brutal. And
Yes.
these
are important storytelling beats to set up a hero and a villain.
Yeah, Mamet knows what he's doing here.
Right.
So now we get to see the hero being
Uncorruptible,
untouchable.
Yes. Untouchable.
So the alderman shows up, he throws the money down, and Ness is like, hey, what's that? My favorite part of this is like the alderman kind of leans in a little bit more. It's like, you know what that is. And so he goes and calls the other three back into the room. It's like, oh shit, this guy's fucked. And he throws the money back at him. They toss him out. Like they physically throw the dude out of the office.
He looks like Christopher Lloyd from Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Oh, he does.
Susan actually is like, he's a tune.
Yeah. He does. Yeah, he does. So now that's when he's like, oh, you guys are untouchable. Is that it, huh? And it's like, hey, that sounds like a cool name.
Hey, yeah, we're going to go with that.
We're going to go with that. So now
So this is where you get the Billy Drago intimidating Ness.
Billy
outside of
Drago,
his house.
scary dude. He is a scary looking dude.
So Frank Nitty,
Nitty.
Frank Nitty, Al Capone's number one enforcer. He's outside of Ness's house because, all right, we can't get to Ness. He's not going to take the bribe. Now we have to go to the next tactic, which is intimidation.
Right.
And that's
like,
what
hey,
he's there to do.
Hey, you got a nice house. Yeah, thanks, guy. Yeah, you got a nice. I bet. Hey, is it your daughter's birthday? because he's carrying a little pink gift. It's like, and like Ness is starting to calculate this.
Well, he's a little naive at this point. It's like, what do you think?
He's naive.
What do you think was
until
going to happen next when you didn't take the bribe, right?
Yeah, he's like, hey, I'm untouchable. I'm the hero of this town, or whatever. He thinks he's the hero. Well, the news hasn't gotten to everybody that he's the hero, but it's gotten to somebody really important. And the enforcers come, and at first, when he says, hey, you got a nice house there, you live there for a while or whatever, and he kind of smiles at that, or he's
a little dismissive of him, not taking it any offense to it yet.
It's not until he says, is it your daughter's birthday, that he's like, this seems weird.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh gee, I wouldn't want anything to happen to her. It's like,
you want to protect your family, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, oh man. And so he runs in, sees that, his wife's fine, but where's the daughter? Oh, the daughter's upstairs. This is a great shot too, because he goes bolting upstairs, throws open the door, the bed's undone, and then it cuts right over to her at the desk, and it's like, oh, okay, everything's fine. And it's almost like you're like seeing it from the opposite of his perspective.
You see it first. You see the bed empty first, so you have that moment of, oh shit, before he does.
Right, and then as if you turn your head, the camera shifts.
Yeah. Everything's fine until he hugs her with a loaded pistol in his hand.
That was a little weird, wasn't it?
Well, hey, it's the 30s, man. It's fine. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
Eliot Ness accidentally shoots daughter while consoling her.
Dude.
For not being kidnapped.
He was very Eliot in his Eliot Ness in this movie, wasn't he? Sorry, bad joke.
So, so now he sends his daughter off. He gives the cop, gives his cop, or the cop, his hat and his jacket. And it's like, hey, if you see anything, shoot first.
Yep.
Like, damn, okay. It's like, I kind of like the idea of having a federal agent telling me what to do here, because I can just start shooting. It will really satisfy my bloodlust. And that's why I joined the police officers thing. That's why I joined the force. So anyway, so now he finds out, it's like, okay. And what's also really important is that all of the Untouchables also show up too, to say, hey man, is everything all right? It kind of builds that, this is now a camaraderie.
Well, yes, Stone and Malone were on a stakeout.
Yeah. And they rush over because Oscar is the first to show up with the cop.
Yeah.
And they say, it's like, dude, can we trust him? And Malone's like, well, I hope. He's my cousin.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, first they say he's on Malone's list.
Yeah.
So Malone has a list of cops he trusts. Yeah.
Right. And it's like, yeah, we should. He's my cousin.
He's my cousin. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is now they find out that, and Malone also finds out. Malone always shows up in every scene he enters in with, I've got all the details that we need.
What else did he say? Something along the lines of, there was something about like the stakeout that they were on. They got some information. It's like, well, who's your source? And Malone says, if you want to keep a secret, don't tell the boss.
Yep. Yeah, because he gets the information about the Canadian border.
That's it. Yeah.
So they chart a flight up to Canada, and they meet with the Mounties, and it's like, so basically, the Mounties are going to block them from going back into Canada, and we're going to stop them from coming into, from escaping into America.
Yeah.
So it's going to be, they're basically going to catch them in a crossfire on a bridge. Which is cinematically perfect. You always is like, they can't go this way. They can only go north or south. They can't go east or west.
Which is a tactical error on the part of the gangsters to meet on a bridge.
Sure, but it sure looks good in the movie.
Sure does.
So there's this itty bitty little abandoned house by the bridge where the Untouchables hole up. And this is where you really get Malone, like he's like, he's like fucking General Patton here, like getting everybody ready.
I like how they call it out too. Like but Ness references it, and he's like, "Yeah, I am the."
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. What did he says that? Are you my tutor?
Yeah.
is what Ness asks, and Sean Connery says, "Yes, I am."
Well, and Oscar's cold. He's like, well, why are you cold? Just stamp your feet. That's something you learn when you're a beat cop. You know, you're going to get cold because you're outside all the time. Just just start stamping your feet. And then you see George doing it too. So it's like both of the guys who have had pretty much zero field time are now basically, doing that exact thing. Because George Stone wasn't going to say that he was cold, but he's gonna take advantage of the advice.
Also, if there was no question that this movie is a Western up until this point,
they ride in on horses.
You have them all lined up on the ridge on horses.
Yeah,
it's a fucking Western. This movie.
Yeah. It's right. It's like
I like how they musically nod at that too, like Morricone's.
Morricone knows what he's doing here. Yep,
because he's the classical. He is the classical, like 20s music style kind of going, but it's infused with Western elements.
You could plug this into a Sergio Leone flick, and it would work perfectly. Yep.
Well, I would say almost, because the note that I made, it is a little bit of a Western, but it also has a little bit of a 30s big band style because he is.
It does, yeah.
Because I think he said that. It was Duke Ellington music that he was referencing.
Yes, that's very true. He infused Duke Ellington. Yep.
But then there's also a beat to it that sounds very mid 80s. So
yeah.
It's very contemporary while still being very classic, but also showing off that again, like I've said this now twice, where it's like this is the last time, like the Old West, where you have an individual lawman going after an individual outlaw.
Yeah.
And this is the last time in American history, at least to this point, that you have that.
But it has all of those like epic musical swells with the horns and things and the strings. It has all of the standoff, music and the gunfight.
Oh, you've got your hero music, you've got your villain music. It all, I mean, it's
these epic themes. Yep.
Which is funny because Al Capone is often wearing the lighter color too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, Nitton's always wearing white.
Nitty's always wearing white. But I mean, like the lawmen are all wearing dark.
Uh-huh.
It kind of reverses that too. But so Jason, this is your scene. Take us through.
Oh man, it always pissed me off as a kid because the Mounties fuck it up. Like you've already got the established fact from when they're kind of talking about the plan up on the ridge on the horseback that this Mountie captain is kind of a loose cannon, and he's getting a little bit excited by the action that they're about to be participating in.
I think he also wants some credit.
Oh, for sure, he's looking to get his name in the papers.
Yep, in the papers, eh?
And I forget what he says about something being half the battle. And Ness is like, okay, let's just calm down with all of that. Losing is also half the battle.
Lots of things are half the battle.
Things are half the battle.
Let's concentrate on the whole
battle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he does say something about like knowing is half the battle or whatever.
That's what it is.
Yeah, and then it's well, so is losing.
Yeah. Lots of things are half the battle.
Right.
Love it. So,
which almost seems like that is where you really get the impression that Ness is coming along. Because you would have expected Malone to have said that.
Right.
Malone's quiet through this whole part. Like he's letting Ness lead, and he's coming up with the good line that time.
So now they're in the cabin, and things are starting to happen. They see the meet on the bridge start to happen, the exchange of goods for money, and they're kind of like,
there's a ledger also. There's a guy poring over a book.
Yeah, and Ness says something along the lines of, okay, this is all according to plan. The Canadians aren't going to make a move until I give the signal.
Until I show my badge.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, boom, Canadians are coming down the mountain.
And they're shooting already.
Yeah.
Before they're even seen. It's like
hilarious.
It seems like exactly something the Canadian Mounties would do. I don't know why, but
we just lost all of our Canadian Mountie listeners. Well, now what are they going to listen to while they're on their horses?
I don't know. What are they going to do? Yeah, I guess they're going to play hockey. So
dismissive of hockey. We've lost all of our northern Midwest listeners too. From
Eat some
Minnesota to
poutine.
Hey, I quit. I like hockey. I quit.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with hockey, but that's all they got left now.
Whatever.
Okay.
So now they're now they have to scramble. They scramble up to get on their horses, run up to the other side of the bridge, right up to the other side of the bridge to stop them from escaping because they got to trap them. And this is when it just turns into an all-out gunfight. I mean, you've got Stone firing a Tommy gun from horseback, which is one of the coolest goddamn things I've ever seen. And really just trying to, it's a full-on shootout. And you've got what's his name?
Oscar.
Shotgun.
Yeah, with the shotgun. Man, it's so great. He's like, he should be dead.
Because I'm sitting there thinking, it's like, oh my God, he's gonna die. He's not ready for this.
But
no, he goes fucking off.
It's one of those great against type scenes. Yeah.
Well, because he sees George get shot in the shoulder.
I was a little annoyed at that because there's this big ass battle happening around him. George gets shot in the shoulder, and Oscar's just standing there for seconds.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, he would have gotten mowed down. I know, but it still annoys me.
He was not in tactical get mowed down formation though, so he was fine.
But then he realizes that, like, he comes to basically, right?
Yeah.
Right. Kind of a trance.
He snaps out of it. Yeah.
He snaps and then he snaps. And he just starts
He
shooting
blows
everybody.
away. I mean, like he blows people up. Like there's the one guy he shoots in the car, and he's just a bag of blood.
Yeah.
And it's just blood all over the inside of that car. It's like, damn. Oscar.
And then
Oscar packs the good ones.
De Palma's favorite thing in this movie is people running out of bullets. Like,
yeah.
Because you have Oscar is having a fight with the guy who's behind the truck. He shoots and busts the barrel open, and they both run out of guns. And while one guy's reloading, Oscar runs in with his rifle, basically.
Yeah, and just basically
a shotgun and just smashes him.
So, he smashes he smashes.
And then he takes a drink of the liquor.
Yeah,
that's my favorite. That's my favorite part. Is like, no, it's fine, but I love it. I have it. My note is accountant takes a drink.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, then, so here comes my favorite part, where it almost seems like maybe the job's getting a little bit too much for Malone, except for it's all tactics. So they capture the guy who had the ledger, and this is another one of those character actors that's in a ton of stuff in the 90s.
Well, there's a moment real quick before this that I think is really important to Ness in his arc. Is when he's got
the one guy.
He's got him dead to rights, and he's like, just surrender, essentially, it's over. And he goes for his gun and he has to put him down, and he's exasperated by that. And he says, "What do you think this is, a game? Why did you do that?"
Yeah.
He didn't want to kill him. Yeah. So it's a turning moment.
Well, because he pretty much realizes that it's like these people are willing to die.
Yeah.
This is how far I have to go.
Yep.
This is how far I have
This
to
is
go.
what Malone has been talking about.
I haven't understood their ruthlessness, their intentions, their commitment until now.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. So now,
which also leads to a great scene with Malone. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
So they capture the guy who's got the ledger. Oscar's pouring over it, and it's like, whoa, it's all coded. But I think this is the proof we need to do the thing that I've been talking about every fucking scene that I'm in many times in this
get him on tax evasion. And he gets so excited.
He's even not sleeping on the airplane. He even wakes up Ness, like on the way to Canada. It's like, we got him on tax evasion. It's like, yeah, go to sleep. Go to sleep, Oscar.
He even says, like, a murderer for tax evasion.
Right,
like,
come on. Yeah.
Come on, dude.
Yeah, it's like, come on. So, yeah, because that's always the thing. It's like, as notorious as most of these mob guys are, they're so well protected behind a lot of that paperwork. Like, almost every single mob guy goes away for something other than what the worst things they've done.
Right.
But anyway, so they, because they, by the way, also they got nitty at the same time on tax evasion. But anyway, so he's like, okay, well, you're gonna help us decode this, and the guy with the ledger is like, nope, not gonna do it. Malone steps in. It's like starts punching him. It's like, you're going to tell us. It's like, and like, you know, Ness has to take Malone outside. It's like, we can't do this.
It's not working.
It's not working. This just isn't going to. So Malone looks down at the guy that Ness shot. Is like, oh, you'll tell me. And he like picks him up and puts him against the window, the back to the, you know, to the people inside. And he puts the gun in the guy's mouth, the dead guy's mouth. And it's like, oh, you're having a hard time talking with a gun in your mouth, huh? Well, I'm going to give you to the count of 3. 1, 2, and he like blows his, gives him an extra hole in it.
And I think the only people that didn't know that guy was dead were the Canadian
Ness.
Mountie dude, and the accountant guy or whatever he is, whatever.
Yeah.
Right. And so he blows him away and he throws him back down. And then the guy inside, the accountant, is like, oh, okay, I'll tell you whatever you want, man. I don't want to die. Yeah.
Yeah, because Malone equaled the only fear that this guy had, which was Capone killing him.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
That's all he's afraid of.
Yeah, because I think at one point, doesn't he even say, you know, at least with me, you have a 50-50 chance or something.
Yeah,
something like that. Anyway, so and then the Mountie walks up and he's like, Mr. Ness, I do not approve of your methods. It's like the guy who almost ruined everything just to be a hero. He's like, Mr. Ness, I do not approve of your methods.
And then he repeats something Malone had said in the past. Well, this is South Chicago.
Yeah, it's like, well, then you're not from Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so they take the guy back. You know, the newspaper, everybody's there. It's like, oh, we've got Capone. We got Capone on tax evasion. If he is found guilty on all of this, it'll be 28 years, essentially. And so they're like, okay, well, if it's 28 years, okay, fine, whatever. Hey, we've done it. We've got him. All right, take him down the service elevator or whatever, or, you know, Oscar's going to take him down the service elevator to a car to basically be transported to prison. Well, there is Nitty is there.
Nitty's there, yeah.
Yeah, and he is dressed as a cop. And he kills the accountant, and he kills Oscar. And by the time that Ness and Malone can get to Oscar, he is hanging in the on a hook, basically, or on something inside the elevator.
And in his blood,
Nitty is written "touchable."
Yeah.
And so this is the first of half the team that's going to die.
Yeah. What's funny to me, well, maybe not funny, but the fact that Oscar was shown to be corruptible before he dies seems like a message. When he drinks, the fact that he drinks the liquor is kind of his death warrant.
Yeah, I mean, maybe thematically.
Yeah. I don't mean in life, but yeah, it's definitely, you know, he breaks and drinks the liquor and it ends up getting him killed.
He's playing a little bit off of the Friday the 13th rules, right? The slasher movie.
Yeah, if you're corruptible, you're going to die or whatever.
The harmonica in this scene is so fucking classic Italian Western. I can't even stand it. I love it so much.
Can't stand it. I love it.
He can't stand it. He cannot stand it. He loves it.
It's like a warm blanket because it's that motif of the creeping villain, right?
Right.
There's a Morricone used a harmonica in a lot of different ways, but one of them was sort of as a suspense and dread technique, and it's used perfectly here.
Yeah. So they're still trying to basically, they don't have the guy who can decipher the ledger, but they're still going to try to get the DA to go forward with the trial. And the DA's like, we don't really have anything. It's like, we have something, but we have no way of proving any of it. By the way, did you guys recognize who played the district attorney?
Nope.
No.
Clifton James. Jason, does that sound familiar?
Clifton James.
How about if I?
Oh shit! From Live and Let Die. Yep.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what if I said Sheriff J.W. Pepper?
Yep. Yep. I did not notice him. I did not recognize him.
He is not credited in this movie, but that is Clifton James, being a non-obtuse caricature of a racist sheriff.
Man, that's too funny.
So this leads to one of my first annoyances of the script of this movie, because the DA does decide that he's not going to press charges because they don't have a witness. And Eliot Ness kind of gives in to that. And he says this stupid line after Oscar has just died. He says, well, sometimes you just have to cut your losses. I'm like, that's not the kind of loss you say, I'm going to cut my losses when somebody dies. It should reinvigorate you. And Malone is all about that, right? Like he wants to keep going, and he's losing faith in Ness a little bit at this point. And then he asks him about his wife again, which is thematic, like throughout the movie, right? He's like, are you married? That's a good thing, right?
Nice to be married. Yeah.
It's nice to be married. But yeah, where do we go from there?
So Ness gets fucking pissed, and he goes and confronts Capone.
Yeah. Yeah. This is again a very, very Hollywood-esque scene. Yeah.
Right. And so he wants to, he's like, hey man, let's fight. Let's go out to the fucking parking lot right now. 4:00 after school. Let's do this, dude. And like, Malone smartly shows up. It's like, yeah, you really don't want to do this.
Not this way.
Not this way. This is not the way. That's because he knows he's just gonna be murdered at that point. It's one thing to go out in the shootout. It's another thing to go out when you pick the fight. So basically at this point, they have to kind of start over a little bit. And it's not long after this that Malone gets visited.
Yeah, Malone tells Ness that he needs to stall the DA because he can get information, basically. Right. So he goes and confronts the captain of the force, who he obviously is known is corrupted, but hasn't, attacked that angle. And it's pretty smart of Malone to say, we need to leave the establishment in place if we want to get Capone. If we start breaking down the underlings, we'll never get to Capone, right?
Right.
So, but that's a pretty cool scene when he fights the captain in the alley there to get him to tell him where the bookkeeper is, so that the DA will have his witness. And
I'm sorry, I jumped ahead of the gun when I had to get up to use the restroom, and when I came back, I heard Chuck talk about Malone taking a drink.
Not Malone, Oscar.
Because Malone takes a drink too, and I thought you said Malone, and that's when the harmonica scene happens with Malone in his apartment.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Because Malone takes a drink.
Yes, he does.
Yep. Well, he's Irish.
So that cues.
That's what I said. You can't keep whiskey from an Irishman.
But
if you want to keep up thematically with that idea, it happens again.
Yeah, exactly.
So also Malone, the first time you actually see him, maybe really the only time you ever really see him vulnerable, is with that captain, because that captain lays a couple of good hits on him. I mean, like, he's hurt by it. I mean, so it's you can't blame like 27 bullets or whatever on him being fragile at that point, but a good solid jab to the, he gets the whole move. The captain gets the whole move of pulling his jacket down and then punching him.
Oh, I know, it's classic.
Yeah, that's classic. You got to pull that jacket down. But yeah, so Malone is home. He's got he's got the list at this point, and somebody has broken into his apartment, and it's a really kind of a cool, like, everybody's sneaking around, you know.
Mhm.
And it is a very well done thing, but
You have the POV intruder shot as well.
yeah. Then you've got his he ends up surprising the guy, basically.
Right, he's winding his record player, which we know from earlier in the film is where he keeps his sawed-off shotgun.
Right.
Yeah.
But he makes a critical error here, right? He sends the guy away, basically.
Right.
I don't know why he does this.
Yeah.
Well, it might be
blowing him away.
I've got a feeling I know what that is. It's Ness infecting the way Malone does things. You don't have to kill every single person, whereas Malone would have been ready to do that on his own. But Ness has affected him like he's affected Ness.
I'll allow it.
You'll allow it, Judge Moore?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I'm the final word on anything personally, but for me, it was like so out of character that I couldn't figure out a rational reason other than what it leads to next. Like, we have to put this guy in a situation where he'll be fooled.
Yeah.
But if you want to go with the he's been tamed a little bit by Ness's demeanor, I can get behind that.
Well, yeah, because I think that before he wouldn't have necessarily.
He would have blew that guy out his fucking door like as soon as he saw him.
Immediately, right? Like, it's a little bit of hubris, right? It's a little bit of we've won all these battles so far, except for we did lose our guy, but it's a little bit of hubris. It's a little bit of, I think, I do think it is a little bit of Ness's demeanor kind of trickling into Malone. But so he he basically says, just like a Dago to bring a knife to a gunfight.
Yep.
Or something like that. And then he goes outside and Nitty's there and he shoots him a lot. So, Malone does go out calling the guy a wop and a Dago. So, he is true to character, I guess.
And he hasn't gone out just yet.
No, he is hanging on. So he gets shot.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, he gets shot many times, many times. And, Ness shows up and he sees, like the blood everywhere. It's like, oh, shit. And then
it's a cool scene. It shows how far Malone had to crawl, basically 95% dead.
All the while, you get operatic music while Capone's taking in an opera.
Yeah. And Nitty informs him that the hit is done.
Yeah, and he's weeping too because he kind of thinks he's winning, but we're weeping because
he's weeping at the opera, and then he starts to smile.
Yes.
Yeah. Now there's a moment I want to make mention of a very specific De Palma fingerprint. It's in this opera scene, and it was in your favorite scene as well, Jeff, and that's the split focus dioptic, where you have both the foreground and the background in focus.
Yeah.
He does it in the scene in the church with Malone and Ness, and he does it again here with the opera with Capone and the opera singer, where you shouldn't see them both in focus, but you do. And it's a very, very common technique you see in a lot of De Palma films. It's not in any way originated by De Palma. I want to say maybe even Orson Welles did it first in Citizen Kane.
He's watching Pagliacci, isn't he?
I believe so, yes.
How about that for some knowledge I just dropped on you?
Yeah.
Don't worry about how I know about that and where I first heard about it.
Watchmen?
No, don't worry.
But anyway, I just wanted to mention that. I think he first used it in Blowout. De Palma did. Yeah. Anyway.
That's Blowout. That's
Travolta.
Yeah, we're probably gonna do that one day, right?
It's a good one.
Yeah.
It's real good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool.
He
All
just
right.
Joe Pesci'd us.
Yeah, I did.
From Lethal Weapon 3 or something.
Yep. So yeah, so now Malone is he's hanging on, and he's got a message to deliver to Ness. Chuck, you're in the middle of that. Sorry, go back.
No, that's fine. He had crawled through his house to get to some kind of invoice.
The room where the invoice is. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And he's lying on the floor when
it's a passenger list.
Yeah. Okay. Passenger list. Sure. But Ness goes in and they show Malone reaching for what Ness assumes is his rosary or whatever, that safety deposit box key and rosary, whatever else is on that rosary
crucifix on the other end.
Yeah. And it's not a crucifix. It's a the patron saint of policemen.
Oh, St. Jude. St. Jude.
Yeah.
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 St. Jude.
Santo Juda.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's an interesting perspective because Ness is thinking that, Malone is dying. He's reaching out for God. Mm-hmm. Like people would often do when they're dying. They start praying to God or whatever.
Looking for their last rites.
Yes, but in reality, he's still trying to nail Capone.
Yeah. It's like, no, I don't want that.
I don't want this fucking thing. I want the list.
Yeah. The accountant's on this list. Yeah.
What are you prepared to do about it? And then dies.
Right.
And then we get to the point of the movie that it kind of falls apart for me. I call this the post-Malone part of the movie.
Oh.
Gross.
It is post-Malone. Come on. That's my last note.
I like it. I think you're honestly kind of right, in my opinion. This is where it starts to get a little slippery for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is we've got the train station scene, right?
Yeah, which is classic.
Right. So this is a very long scene. This is one of those things where if I were to use Jay's comment earlier that is based on my comment from previous episodes, this is too long of a scene to happen today.
Yeah.
But it's perfect for this movie.
It was too long.
Okay.
For me.
Well, it's Sergei Eisenstein. It is a direct lift from Battleship Potemkin. It is a direct lift from the originator of the montage. Like it's De Palma being De Palma. He's showing you his film history chops, and he wanted to shoot his version of the baby carriage scene in Potemkin, and that's exactly what he did. It worked really well at the time. I think it still kind of works, but for me, it's more of a curiosity now than anything.
I think they just showed the baby in the carriage too much. Like, I know you're trying to build anxiety in the viewer, right, of what's going to happen next, but I had hit the point of anxiety to where it was high enough after the first 2 times he looks at the baby.
Well, I think
the next 7. You know what I mean? I just feel like it was too much.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I think at this point also Ness is proving 2 things. One, he's too dedicated to what he's in the moment to do, which is get the guy. He's not thinking about the potential collateral damage around him.
I think he is. I think that's the whole dilemma that you're being presented with is his.
Let me finish this thought because I have a counter to that. The other thing is that he is a little unsure of himself because he doesn't have Malone anymore. So Malone's a person who acts first. Ness overthinks things too much. And if he had been totally aware of all of the surroundings and understood that there's more going on in this train station than a bunch of bad guys showing up with an accountant that he has to nab, he would have immediately helped that woman because he had like 5 minutes to help her. He would have just helped her and got her out of the way and would have moved on. But he sat there and he didn't know what to do. He was kind of rudderless at that point. And because he didn't know what he had to do, it made everything that much more confusing to him. And I think that's it all plays part too, because the whole time we're all sitting there watching the scene saying, help her or move her, get her out of the way or help her, one or the other. And he doesn't until it's too late. And he's too hyper focused on, which is, I think, a flaw in Eliot Ness's character, even though it's probably more accurate that it's a flaw in his persona based in movies and TV, is that he is too buttoned down and he's too hyper focused on the job, not thinking about the ins and outs around it.
I think it also illustrates that he gets bailed out by a team member, right?
Yeah, it's a good thing that Andy Garcia came back.
he's not really anything. He is an important part of a whole, but he's not everything.
Right.
Even when half of his team has been slaughtered.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. So this is where a woman's trying to pull a carriage up the stairs. He ends up helping her, but he helps her too late to the point where they're still on the stairs, and she's not out of the way, and the kid's not out of danger when the bad guys show up, and a shootout starts. And the shootout happens as a baby carriage is rolling down the. So there's all sorts of extra danger here. The kid could get shot. The mom could get shot.
The kid's going to go flying.
The kid could fly when it gets there, but again, good thing that Andy Garcia shows back up. Ness is going to run out of bullets. Ness is also exposed more so than he would have been originally.
Because he decides to run down the stairs to try to
stop the kid.
Yeah.
Which is funny because they set that up early where he is he's a new father, right? He has
got a young baby and a daughter.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so he has a new kid. So he understands that delicacy too of the kid is in pretty mortal danger. Which is funny because Ness never had biological children in his life.
Really?
He had an adopted child from either his second or third marriage.
This, by the way, was the debut of Patricia Clarkson. She played Ness's wife. First feature for her.
Yep. He was not a very good husband. But I don't know if that's the old trope of cops don't make good husbands or
married to the job.
Yeah, I don't know. But Eliot Ness had character flaws in real life. But anyway,
yes, he
did. So then he shoots all the other bad guys, but there's one goon left, and there's the accountant. And Andy Garcia has shown up to give Ness a new gun with a fresh load of bullets because again he runs out of bullets.
Dude, he slides in, he throws a gun to Ness knowing somehow magically that he's out of bullets.
Well, he probably saw that coming.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And he saved the baby carriage.
Yes, he did. Andy Garcia is the real hero of this movie.
Yes, he absolutely is.
He is, yeah.
So then because also remember George Stone is the marksman of the group. That comes back after
this gets to pay off. Yep.
This gets to pay off because the goon is holding a gun to the accountant's head, and it's like, I'm going to shoot him. You got 5 seconds to make a decision if you're going to let me go or if I'm going to kill this guy. He counts to 1. Ness says, "Do it." Garcia shoots.
He says, "You have him," and he's like, "Yes."
Oh yeah.
And then he says, "Take him."
Take him.
Yep.
Garcia shoots, and then he says 2.
Yep.
Yeah. So all of that happened between the counts of 1 and 2.
It's awesome. That part is awesome.
And so it's like, okay, well now it's time to go to the court. And Nitty is there. He's carrying a gun. You're not supposed to carry a gun inside a courtroom.
So this is all the courtroom stuff is just weird to me because yes, you're not supposed to carry a gun in a court, I guess, but Ness calls him out to the bailiff, leads him out of the courtroom. Bailiff takes Nitty out, and he's confronted with the fact that he's wearing a gun, but then Nitty shows that he has a note
From
to
the
carry
mayor.
a gun from the mayor,
Yeah.
and to give him all due like respect or something. But then it's like, but you're still not allowed to have a gun in court, right? Like that's a law that he broke, regardless of his note from the mayor.
I think he's been given a pardon by the mayor.
That's silly.
But they're not going to let him back in, right?
But they're not going to let him back in.
Yeah.
They're not going to let him back in.
It's like, let him
okay,
have his
fine,
gun.
you can have your gun, but you're not getting in there. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, Nitty escapes.
Well, he gives them. Well, this is another kind of dumb fuck part because when they took the gun, he also took his matches. Like I don't know, he was like emptied his pockets, and Ness goes to light his cigarette with the match from Nitty's matchbook, and the address for Malone is in the matchbook,
which we saw earlier.
Yeah, which we saw earlier. Which now we know that Ness knows that Nitty was there that night when Malone was killed. But Malone does a dumb thing here. Malone like panics.
Nitty?
Nitty does a dumb thing here. He panics and runs. It's like all you have is a cop's address in your matchbook. It's not like indicative of anything more than that, right?
Well, I mean,
but now we got to have Hollywood things happen.
Well, it's Hollywood things, and it's also again, it's Hollywood because it's now you have to show the bad guy being weak, right? Like the tide has turned now. So now the guy who was so tough before is now weak and doing stupid shit.
Yeah, it's a little thin for me to like. That's the thing.
I mean,
just remember that this is all post Malone. So all the entertainment that was in this movie, the first 2/3 is gone. They have to drudge it up somewhere. Like it's important for Malone to die in this film, but it's so bad for this film that he dies.
He is the best character in the whole.
That's why he won the Oscar. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, it's also the Untouchables. Nothing that has ever had the title The Untouchables has ever been anything but making everyone who isn't one of the Untouchables, and especially Eliot Ness, look stupid or bad, or it's all. I mean, again, it's the dramatization of something that was much more boring in my
sure I have no doubt about that, and I understand that. I just think that that the script starts to take a few shortcuts with that, to where the suspension of disbelief, it's not that okay, I know these things didn't happen, but they could have happened, right? It's more, I know these things didn't happen and they could never have fucking happened, right?
Right.
That's what annoys me about this last act. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and that Eliot Ness's wife is in the courtroom like that. That made me mad too, because there's no way a rational human would have, even if you think you're nailing Capone, he has other people out there. You wouldn't bring your wife out into the light right now, at least in my opinion.
Sure.
But
I don't know.
It's for drama. It's for dramatic effect.
Yeah, I mean that I can forgive it that.
Well, it's basically all threads are going to be led to this courtroom.
Yeah.
So.
But now you've got like the pretty. This is pretty iconic in this movie. The rooftop standoff scene between Ness and Nitty.
Yeah, because so they chase each other around, and he eventually Ness eventually catches Nitty. And because Nitty is like basically is on a rope and he's climbing up, and he's like, "Hey, you gonna arrest me? Treasury man." And then, so he gets up, which is funny because Ness is like, "Don't push me" when he's pulling him up off the building.
Oh, Ness has a moment too where he's like, should I save him or not?
Right.
Yeah, he considers shooting him while he's on the rope.
Yeah. But then he's like, "I'm going to do everything by the letter of the law and all of that. So I'm gonna help him up." And Nitty just can't shut his fucking face. He's like, "Oh yeah, I shot your buddy," and he squealed like an Irish pig. And like Ness is like, "Wait, what'd you say? The fuck you say?" And he's like, "Yeah," he screamed like
like
Irish,
a stuck pig or something.
something
like the Irish pig he is or something.
Yeah.
At this point, the way this was going, I half expected for them to cut back to Malone saying, "What are you prepared to do?" Like, it just felt like that kind of thing, and I was really glad actually.
Yeah, it wasn't that. It wasn't that heavy-handed. Yeah,
right.
Exactly. Yeah.
So at that point, he Ness gets pissed, and he grabs Nitty and he throws him off the building. And Nitty's screaming. He's like, "Oh, do you sound like that?"
Yeah. Do you sound anything like that?
Yeah, and he crashes into a car. To which then we get. He comes back to the courtroom. Andy Garcia asks him, "Where's Nitty?" He's like, "Oh, he's in the car."
Yeah.
But that's a funny line.
That's a good line. It's a good line.
Brittany, we watched it with the kids, and Brittany was like, "Oh yeah, he's in the car. He's definitely in the car." Don't judge us for watching it with our kids. But
I watched it when I was 10 years old.
Yeah, but I probably saw
I did
this
too.
back then too.
Yeah.
But at this point, Andy Garcia, I forget his character name, George Stone, found the list of jurors in Nitty's coat. Like the bad guy would have that list with the amount of money they gave to them.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
So this is the thing. Like, we're talking about forgiving some of these things. There's just a lot of them in this third act that they start to pile up. I'm not saying I hate this movie by any stretch of the means, but it takes a lot of forgiveness in this.
This is the worst one for me.
Go ahead.
This next scene. It's the worst for me.
Take it.
So Kevin Costner wants to sidebar with the judge in his chambers, and he tells him that there are members of the jury that have been bribed, that have been got to by Capone, and that he needs to do something about it. And it's left a little bit unsettled in the scene, but Ness goes back to his seat. The judge goes out into court, and then he says to the bailiff, he says, "Go into Judge Wapner's chamber, Judge Wapner's court or whatever." Yeah. And bring his jury in here, which is the dumbest fucking thing in the history of dumb fuck things. Like, I hate it so much. And then, of course, like Capone starts to have a conniption fit because that's not the jury he's bribed. And his lawyer changes his plea to guilty, and it's
that's so dumb.
Pandemonium, and Capone can't be held back from like attacking everyone, and it's fucking so stupid. I hate it so much. Like, first of all, like what moron in any reality would believe that could happen?
The changing of the plea immediately, I'm like, that can't
as well.
do that.
But the fact of the matter is, like, here's what actually happened. And I know it's not as dramatic, but it's still pretty fucking good. There was a jury switch in real life, but it was not a jury that had heard the entire case, that was then automatically swapped out with another jury who hadn't heard the case, which could have absolutely no legal standing to make a judgment on a case that had been heard.
Are we sure that the entire case had been heard and it wasn't just an arraignment trial?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The jury had been selected either way. So what really happened, and this is pretty cool, is that they had not begun jury selection yet. There was a pool of potential juries that they were going to go through jury selection on, and it got to the judge. I forget, one of the Untouchables said, "Hey, I think you've got some people in this pool who have been got to by Capone. We got to do something about it." So what the judge did was he just dismissed the entire potential jury pool and brought in a new pool of potential juries that they selected from. Then they had a trial. What happened in the movie is unbelievably dumb.
Yeah, it's no. There is no such thing as a jury scene in a movie
It's probably
that goes at all like it normally does. We've all done our jury duty. We know how fucking boring it is. I would kill for some unbelievable shit to happen in it.
Oh, it's just really.
I've
really
never done
silly.
jury duty. by
I've
the
never
way.
actually either. I've
You motherfuckers, I've been called like 5 times.
I've been called, but I didn't have to go. They didn't want me.
It's a lost day. Like, you come out of that fucking courtroom, you get there before the sun rises, and you leave when the sun's about to set, and you think, the fuck just happened to my life? Like, how long was I in there? It's like it sucked, guys.
Jeff doesn't want to do his civic duty. That's what it sounds like to me.
No, I've done my civic duty, and you two motherfuckers' civic duties. So
I filled out the paperwork and sent it back, and they never.
Yeah, that's what I did too.
Yeah, never called me.
You sons of bitches.
Anywho, I don't like the ending of this movie, but I like the last line a lot.
Yes, I was wondering if you liked that last line. What is the last line? Hey, Mr. Ness, did you hear about them possibly repealing the prohibition? What are you going to do then?
What are you going to do next? I think I'll have a drink.
There you go. Eliot
And he
Ness
did. Ness had lots and lots of drinks after
Ness,
that.
This also goes to show that Ness is about whatever the law is. He is pliable to the law, not to.
Right, it wasn't a morality.
No, it wasn't morality. It was the letter of the law of the land. He even says it. Hey,
He says
right
at the
now,
beginning of the movie. Yep.
yeah, right now you can't drink. It's the law of the land.
Yep.
And I'm here to I'm here to uphold that. But yeah, he is not the best of people in real. But a lot of those lawmen that chase down outlaws, there's a lot of gray area with what they really were like.
Well,
he gives the St. Jude medallion to Stone also.
Oh yeah.
And Stone says, "I like this." Stone says, "I think he would have liked you have had it." And Ness says, "I think he would have liked a cop to have it."
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he does ask Stone at one point. It's like, "Oh, so what do you want to be? You want to be a lost cause? Or you want to be a cop?" Yeah.
Yep.
So, I don't know. I don't care. I like this movie.
I mean, I like it. Don't get me wrong.
I like this movie a whole lot.
I like it lots and lots, but there are some eye roll moments for me.
It's okay to critique a movie that you like.
Totally.
One interesting side note, and Jason, I think you had this experience too. Visited Alcatraz while I was in San Francisco.
Oh, yeah.
And Capone's cell was all set up like it was supposed to have been when he was there, and played. I think he played the banjo or the fiddle, or something most nights there. But it was pretty cool to see the rock, and
it was cool.
Yeah.
Capone was transferred to Alcatraz because he was actually harassed in jail quite mercilessly, and they moved him to Alcatraz when it opened. But he was also riddled with syphilis by then as well, and died not long after being released after his prison sentence.
Did he get released? I thought he got transferred and then died, but maybe he was.
He got transferred to Alcatraz.
I thought he got transferred again. And then died in whatever holding cell he was in.
I want to say he maybe got out, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
So hang on a second here. I can tell you right.
I know he died of heart failure.
By the way, if you don't know the story of Alcatraz in general, check it out sometime. There's lots of cool, like Indian occupancy or Native American occupancy and all sorts of cool stuff about Alcatraz.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
So due to his failing health, Capone was released from prison on November 16th, 1939, and referred to Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore for the treatment of paresis, which is caused by late-stage syphilis. Hopkins refused to admit him on his reputation alone, but Union Memorial Hospital accepted him. So there you go. He also, Frank Nitti. Frank Nitti went to prison at the same time as Capone for tax evasion.
Oh wait, he wasn't thrown off a wolf.
He was not
a wolf.
A wolf.
We'll just skip right by that. Go ahead.
No, that's staying in. That is staying in.
That's fantastic.
No, he was not thrown from a wolf, or from a coyote either. He was sent to jail for a little bit, but he got out sooner. They didn't have as much on him, so he got out sooner and took over Capone's gang. There is some legend around the fact that he was just a figurehead, that he actually didn't call the shot, but both contemporary and basically all the history shows that he did essentially as good of a job as Capone would have. They just didn't have booze anymore. They had prostitution and drugs.
I was wondering what their next racket was.
Yeah, so sense. It was mostly prostitution. And a lot of protection stuff, but anyway, a lot of mob stuff. But anyway, he then was going to go to jail for something in the 40s. And it was going to be bad. It was a bad thing.
This one was going to put him away,
pretty much. And so he got super drunk and decided to go off and kill himself. Except for he was so drunk that when he put the gun to his head, he missed, and some construction workers nearby thought somebody was shooting at him, and they shot him.
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they gunned him down. Because then the cops showed up. It's like, oh, wow, look, it's Frank Nitti. Anyway, he did not have a very good end of his life either. So crime does not pay, kids.
No, it does not.
It does not. And it does for a little while, and then it does not.
If you're going to be shady, get a badge, and you'll be all right.
I don't know. Defund Chuck. Let's do that. Anyway, so it's a pretty good movie. I like it.
I like it too. I want to make that clear that, with the exception of the issues in the third act, for me, I thought it was a good movie.
Yeah, I like it a lot too. I've seen it several times, and it always hits the same beats for me. There are moments that I just really, really, really like. Specifically, Malone, Sean Connery, love him in this. It's just a fun movie, and again, it's it's not a movie that you see made anymore in Hollywood. We're sort of in an age of ultra realism these days in Hollywood and on television. I made the comment to Susan, it's like, if there someone were to make this, well, somebody kind of did make this movie recently. Josh Trank made a biopic, Capone, with Tom Hardy, which I haven't seen. I think it got mixed reviews, but I'm sure it's like hyper real.
Yeah. It's just that wouldn't be as interesting.
If they made a new version of the Untouchables TV show, which I guarantee you someone will, it will be like a 10-episode arc. It'll stay true to like the pedantic sort of letter of how things happen in the timeline of events. I'm sure there'll be very little artistic liberty where there is. It's probably just to fill in some cracks. It would probably still be really good, to be quite honest, but it wouldn't be as fun.
Yeah.
And that's what this movie is pretty damn fun.
Agreed. Next week we have the first of a couple movies that Chuck has brought us, and that is Sneakers.
Oh,
which is
yes.
one that Jason really wanted to do.
Yeah, I was gonna say thanks, Chuck, for bringing it, because this is what I've wanted to do for years now.
Well, we've been busy. We've been busy with Sexy September.
I've never really figured out the right place to slot it in. So
well, here we go. We're gonna do it now. So that should be fun. Next on this upcoming Monday. So in between now and Sneakers, we have Monster Mondays, 1953's War of the Worlds. It's good stuff. It's a real good.
It is a good one.
It's a real good.
I haven't seen that in a while. You got that Criterion, huh?
Yeah, it is. It's real good. It's real good.
Yeah.
But
how did they clean it up? Do they like
it looks
remove
pretty good.
some of But did they remove some of the stuff that makes it charming, like some of the wire work and things, or is that still in there a little bit?
I didn't notice. I didn't
Okay.
notice much of it, but yeah. Anyway, yeah. So as far as my personal stuffs at B Movie Enema, let's talk about that real quick, guys. This upcoming Friday on bmovieenema.com, you can read what I have to say about the movie Huntress, Spirit of the Night. It was actually the one good movie of Full Moon Fever 2 that I was doing this month. So it's actually a really fun little sort of a werewolf movie. It's not really a werewolf though. But B Movie Enema, the series, episode 3 this Saturday night is Oasis of the Zombies. So some Jess Franco action. It is not a good movie. It is really not a good movie. It's a shame because I really like Jess Franco. But Jason, where are our things found?
FilmSeizure.com. Go there, love it, bookmark it. Do people do RSS feeds anymore? Can you RSS feed FilmSeizure.com?
I suppose you can.
Yeah, do that then if you know how and want to. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Watch us, listen to us on YouTube, SoundCloud, places like that.
Bunch of places.
Google us.
Google us.
Send us an email. Send us a goddamn email. FilmSeizure@gmail.com.
Yes. Agreed. One note that I made about Sean Connery in this movie, I'm almost positive that this is the version of Sean Connery that Saturday Night Live said that's what we want for Celebrity Jeopardy.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes good sense.
Because at one point in time, he does talk about Alex Trebek's Dago mustache. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So thank you, Jason, for telling everybody where to do the things. Chuck, thank you for bringing us one of Jason's favorite movies for next week. I can finally tear down the stone wall that I apparently had been building by accident, so we can finally talk. I like sneakers.
It's one charming mid-90s techno thriller.
Early 90s techno.
Early 90s, yeah.
Anyway, so yeah. So until next week, when we when us sneakers putting sneakers on to do some sneakering, I am Jeff Arbuckle.
I'm Post Malone.
I'm Jason Oliver, and you have been listening to Film Seizure.